I can turn into a fish. Chapter 26, A Taste of the Wild. Chu Xian wasn't aware of He Wei's concerns. It could be said that Chu Xian didn't care about He Wei at all. These days, ever since Chu Xian downloaded the Big Fish Eat Little Fish system, his entire worldview had changed. He felt he had a much higher status than before. The trifles of lowly people weren't worth his attention anymore. Chu Xian exited the fancy car and glanced over the small restaurant in front of him with some confusion. The location was a little remote, and the appearance wasn't fancy, but there were many luxury cars parked nearby. The sign hanging in front of this little restaurant said Wild Taste. Let's go in, Xiao Xian. Tonight I'll give you a chance to taste some top-quality wild meat. Jinhua said with a smile as he noticed Chu Xian's curious look. At the entrance, they were greeted by the restaurant owner himself. It was obvious this wasn't Jinhua's first time. The restaurant owner led them personally to a private room. The private room had a great ambience, but what surprised Chu Xian was how few options there were on the menu, only 7 or 8. He Xiao Xian, this small restaurant is the best wild meat restaurant in all of Haicheng. All the meat here is from wild animals caught in the mountains. Their menu changes every day depending on the supply, and although the prices are no cheaper than the seafood at larger restaurants, their dishes taste better, Jinhua explained. Wild chicken, snake meat, scorpions, pangolins. They really are all wild. Chu Xian said with admiration as he looked at the menu. With a higher standard of living, the food we eat is also improving. Some wild game and seafood are very expensive, but they're worth the price. There are some things you can't try even if you have the money. Chu Xian nodded. Wild meat was indeed very delicious, unlike farmed meat. It was fresh, natural, clean, and also healthier than animals bred in captivity. Chu Xian was stunned when he saw the bill. A meal of only 5 or 6 courses cost more than 10,000. This reminded him of the dishes at Gudeo recipe. An idea came to him, but he shook his head and pushed it away. He was still very far from his goal. But when he thought of how he ramelded 2 regular fish and sold them for 4 million RMB, Chu Xian thought maybe it wouldn't be too hard to achieve his goal after all. Maybe it'd become a possibility in the near future. Xiao Sen, what do you think about him? After watching Chu Xian leave, Jinhua sat in his car and turned to ask his son. Not bad. Jin Sen thought for a while. A very confident man who has his own ideas. When we were talking today, he said he wanted to start an ornamental fish farm, in addition to a regular fish farm. He's a very good young man, capable and connected. He has great potential. If you two get along, you should spend more time with him. In the future, one more friend will open up one more path. Since you've already graduated, you should spend less time with those scoundrels you call friends. Dad, what do you mean by scoundrels? They're all great people. Jin Sen said with some dissatisfaction. You think your dad doesn't know about your so-called friends? Their family backgrounds are great, but they're just spoiled kids with rich and powerful parents who only know how to fool around. They're completely incompetent. You should befriend more talented people with real skills. Chu Xian wasn't aware that the father and the son duo were talking about him, and he also didn't know that he'd been identified as a talented person by a billionaire. He took a taxi back to the Golden Dragon Group before riding his moped back to his shop. Papa. I'm going to trade you for a stainless steel basin. After patting the shaking seat, Chu Xian locked his moped and entered his shop. Should I go rent a house tomorrow or buy one instead? Chu Xian set out his mat and blanket and thought to himself with a smug smile, I need a car too. Now that I have more than 4 million, what fancy car should I buy? I can figure it out later. I need to call Xiao Ying first. Chu Xian smirked and dialed Xiao Ying's phone number. Hey babe, are you free tomorrow? I have a surprise for you. Chu Xian said happily. Tomorrow. I don't have time. I'm busy with my internship, but after a few days I'll be free. Xiao Ying's tired voice made Chu Xian frown. What? You still have that many things to do? Don't you already have everything ready for the internship? After a few seconds of silence, Xiao Ying answered, there are a few more procedures that need to be finalized. I'll probably be done over the next week. I can't spend time with you these days, I'll come find you after I finish dealing with everything. Okay, don't work yourself too hard. Chu Xian frowned again and hung up after chatting with her for a while. I was going to surprise you, but I guess I have more time to prepare for it. A happy smile appeared on Chu Xian's face. The next morning, after Chu Xian finished breakfast, he called Jin Sen. Half an hour later, a fancy Range Rover parked at the Guwu Street parking lot and Jin Sen, along with a 30-something man, came out. Brother Jin. Chu Xian greeted them. Let's go. Let's move the goldfish into the car. Young Master Chu, hello. How are you? The young man on the side greeted Chu Xian respectfully and offered a cigarette. Chu Xian stared at him in surprise, sensing that the man was somewhat familiar. Bro, this is Manager Wang who came to interview yesterday. He'll be in charge of the Golden Dragon Holiday Resort in the future, Jin Sen said, as an introduction. Oh, hello Manager Wang. Don't be so polite, just call me Chu Xian or Xiao Xian. Chu Xian said with some pride. Fuck, a middle-level manager from Golden Dragon Group just called me Young Master Chu. This feels great. Is the resort officially opening the day after tomorrow? Chu Xian asked Jin Sen as they walked. Yes, pretty much everything is ready. We're ready to open for business the day after tomorrow. You must come. Jin Sen nodded, continuing, you need to come often and help out our business. Haha, aren't you afraid of me eating and drinking to the point of bankrupting you guys? Chu Xian said with a laugh. Not at all. If you dare, I'll just take some fish from your shop in exchange. Just a few will cover all the costs. Jin Sen knew his fish were very expensive. Then how about I bring my fish there as money to spend? Chu Xian smiled as he borrowed a cart from the shop next door. He placed all the goldfish into Jin Sen's car. Zzz, your goldfish really are pretty. No wonder they sell for 2,000 each. Jin Sen said in admiration. I can gift you some if you like. Chu Xian said with a smile. Forget it, I won't take care of them well and will just end up killing them all anyway. Jin Sen shook his head and loaded all the goldfish into his car.